James never wanted to attend Emily's annual work party, but he went out of obligation, not excitement. The event was held on a glittering rooftop overlooking downtown Chicago, a sleek and buzzing crowd of professionals swirling under the city lights. In his worn suit, James felt more like an outsider than ever before. Emily, by contrast, moved easily among her colleagues, laughing too brightly and touching arms too casually. It wasn't just the crowd that unsettled him. It was the way Emily didn't seem to notice he was there at all. He hovered near the bar, nursing a drink, a growing pit forming in his stomach. Something was off. Groups of coworkers stole glances at him and whispered behind their hands, their laughter feeling just a bit too sharp. James fought the urge to walk out and leave Emily to her polished world. Then she appeared, gliding toward him through the crowd. But she wasn't alone. A man, tall and smug, flanked her side with familiarity that set James' nerves on edge. "You're her husband?" the man said with a mocking grin. "I'm Jake. I'm going to dance with her now." Before James could answer, Emily chimed in, laughing lightly. "You don't need his permission, Jake. Come on." Her words hit James harder than any insult, the casual betrayal in them sending a spike of heat through his chest. James narrowed his eyes, his voice low and dangerous. "Don't even think about touching her," he warned. "Not with your filthy hands." Jake chuckled, a sound full of contempt. "You don't own her, buddy," he sneered. "I'll dance with her and maybe more." Then, without waiting for a response, he slid his hand under Emily's blouse, fingers brushing across her back, claiming her right in front of James's stunned gaze. James saw red. His heart pounded as gasps broke out from the nearby guests, their shocked faces confirming he wasn't imagining the sheer disrespect of the moment. The fury that had been simmering now exploded. Moving on pure instinct, he stormed across the floor, his voice cutting through the stunned silence as he barked at Jake to back off. Jake didn't move. Instead, he leaned in closer to Emily, defiant and grinning, daring James to do something about it. The onlookers froze, their breath held as the confrontation teetered on a knife's edge. James' hand went to his jacket, and without thinking, he drew his concealed Colt, just enough for Jake and everyone nearby to see. The party atmosphere shattered into tense silence, the music dying as heads whipped toward the unfolding scene. "Step away from her," James said, his voice cold and deadly steady. Jake's eyes flicked to the gun, then back to James, drunk on arrogance or maybe just foolishness. He laughed and slurred. "What's the matter, James? Scared she might like me better?" The words hit James like a spark to dry tinder. Emily stood frozen, saying nothing, not even looking at him. Whatever hope James had that she would defend him evaporated. The people around them watched in breathless horror. Jake still pushing, still grinning. Leaned in as if to kiss her. That was it. James snapped. Without hesitation, he closed the distance between them and drove his fist into Jake's jaw. The crack of impact echoed over the rooftop. Jake stumbled back, crashing into a table, sending glasses and bottles flying. Gasps rippled the crowd as some guests backed away, and others moved as if to intervene. Jake clutched his face, swearing, his smug expression replaced by a snarl of pain and rage. Emily still hadn't moved. She just stood there, her face pale and unreadable. James, breathing hard, felt the weight of the moment settle heavily on his shoulders. There was no undoing what had happened, no fixing what had been broken long, before Jake's drunken taunts. He looked once more at Emily, a stranger in a familiar dress, then turned and pushed through the stunned crowd without another word, leaving the glittering rooftop and the wreckage of his marriage behind him. James looked up at Jake, the man's earlier bravado now replaced by a simmering mix of rage and shame. The Colt, still tucked at James's side, untouched, served as a grim, silent reminder that James could have pushed the situation far beyond a simple punch. But he hadn't. Instead, James chose a different kind of blow, one that wounded Jake far deeper, stripping him of his ego in front of the very people he had tried to impress. The reaction was immediate. Security quickly rushed to the scene, grabbing the stunned Jake and dragging him away as murmurs of shock and disbelief rolled through the crowd. James stood firm, fists still balled tightly at his sides, his chest heaving with each breath as the weight of what had just happened started to sink in. Although the physical clash had ended, The emotional storm it stirred was only beginning, and James knew deep down that this night had only just begun to unravel. The scuffle left a permanent mark on the evening. Staff members hustled to regain control, but the damage was done. Jake, nursing a swollen jaw and stripped of the cocky attitude that had fueled his antics all night, was marched out under the unrelenting stares of the guests. The smug smirk he had worn so proudly had vanished, replaced by a bitter grimace of defeat. As whispers and judgment chased him from the venue, James watched him go, feeling a grim satisfaction. Jake's departure wasn't just an exit. It was a public reckoning. However, any fleeting sense of closure James might have felt was short-lived. Emily, who had remained frozen during the altercation, suddenly broke her silence with a cry sharp enough to cut through the murmuring crowd. Tears streaked her face as she turned on James, her voice cracking with anger and desperation. "What the hell is wrong with you? You've ruined everything," she shouted, not once acknowledging Jake's behavior or her own role in what had happened. Instead, she heaped all the blame squarely onto James. Her accusations, hurled in front of her colleagues, cut deeper than any punch ever could. The sympathy that had briefly hovered around James now shifted into something colder, harsher, pity, judgment. In real time, the room witnessed not just the collapse of Jake's bravado, but the public unspooling of James and Emily's marriage. James stood there, fists clenched and heartbreaking, realizing that tonight's confrontation had ripped the mask off deeper problems that had festered between them for far too long. In the days that followed, the entire ugly truth surfaced. Jake's disrespectful behavior at the party wasn't an isolated moment. It was a culmination of a months-long affair between him and Emily. As James pieced together the moments he had brushed off, Emily's excitement about the party, the sly glances and whispers, a devastating picture emerged. Almost everyone at her office had known about the affair, leaving James humiliated not just by her betrayal, but by the knowledge that he had been the fool in the room. The fallout from that night was brutal. Emily's reputation at work crumbled almost immediately. Once respectful colleagues now kept their distance, not wanting to be associated with the scandal. Jake, too, faces consequences. His behavior at the event was formally reported, and within weeks he was terminated for misconduct. Their public disgrace mirrored the destruction of their private relationship, leaving both to navigate the wreckage they had created. For James, the path forward became clear. He refused to let guilt, manipulation, or misplaced loyalty chain him to a relationship built on lies. He filed for divorce without hesitation, describing the decision as both painful and empowering. While the legal battle that followed was grueling, James found solace in knowing he had chosen to act with dignity, while Emily's choices had led her to ruin. As he looked back, James realized the betrayal had taught him something more valuable than he could have imagined: the necessity of self-respect. Though the pain had been sharp and the humiliation bitter, it forced him to see the truth. Staying with someone who did not honor or respect would have cost him far more than a marriage. It would have cost him his sense of self. By choosing to leave, James didn't just walk away from Emily. He walked toward himself. He reflected on the courage it took to face the truth head-on, to remove himself from a toxic situation, no matter how difficult it was. Sometimes, he mused, the hardest decisions are the ones that ultimately save you. James spoke candidly about the importance of never settling in a relationship where you are mistreated or undervalued, whether by a partner, a friend, or anyone else. Letting go of toxic people isn't just about severing ties. It's about creating the space needed to welcome healthier relationships and opportunities into your life. In the end, James expressed gratitude for the painful clarity that night had given him. While it marked the end of one chapter, it also signaled the beginning of a stronger, more grounded life. The experience left him with a lesson he would carry forever. Self-respect isn't something others hand to you. It's something you claim fiercely and without apology. Reflecting on the ordeal, James said with calm resolve, "That night taught me a lesson I'll never forget. You can't control someone's loyalty, but you can control how much of yourself you're willing to lose for them." These words, simple yet powerful, captured the heart of his journey. He could not force Emily to be faithful, but he could refuse to sacrifice his own soul trying to save something broken beyond repair. In choosing to walk away, James didn't just end a toxic marriage. He reclaimed his power, his dignity, and his future. And in doing so, he offered a reminder to anyone who heard his story. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave what's breaking you, so you can build a life you truly deserve.